Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today in the special session that we have titled Crypto Crime, Meet the CISOs Securing the $2.48 trillion crypto market. This is really a unique session. It's the first of its kind, CISOs of crypto companies only. I have myself as the moderator. I'm currently the Chief Information Security Officer at Crypto.com. I've been in the space for the crypto space for over 4 years now. And in the cybersecurity space for over 20 years. I'd like to have our panel speakers introduce themselves. They come from very prominent areas around the world, as well as different types of crypto companies, from cold storage through to services. So why don't we start with Phillip? Phillip, would you like to introduce yourself very briefly?
Sure, Jason. Thank you very much. So I'm Phillip Martin. I'm the CISO for Coinbase. I've been at Coinbase just about 5.5 years at this point, and seen it grow from a little company to the behemoth it is today.
That's fantastic. And Matt, what about you?
Yeah, hi Jason. Great to be here with all of my colleagues. So, I know Phil and Andrew and yourself very well from our interactions. But I'm Matt Johnson. I started my career working with the Australian Federal Police 25 odd years ago now, and I've been in the cybersecurity infosec space for more than the last 20 years. And I joined Ledger at the beginning of this year, so only 7 months into my journey with Ledger, and it's been a wild ride, and very much loving every moment of it. Great place to be.
That's great. And Andrew, what about you?
Thanks, Jason. Yeah, so I've been with Komainu pretty much from the start. Background in retail banking, defense, telecoms, and then a military intelligence background before moving into the private sector.
That's fantastic. So today, I think what we're going to do is a little bit more of a roundtable discussion, since it's the first time that we've ever had something like this. And I think it could be quite unique for all of us to be sharing a little bit about our experiences in the crypto space, given all of the hacks and all of the interesting different types of crypto-related security incidents that have happened. But before we go into any of that, I think we maybe take a step back and maybe have a little bit of an icebreaker. And I would like to ask each and every one of you just a simple question. From your perspective, what has been the biggest cybersecurity challenge specifically to your organization in the crypto space in the past 12 months? So maybe Andrew, we'll start with you.
Thanks, Jason. Yeah, great question. I think our biggest challenge and my biggest challenge is the immaturity or the embryonic nature of the supply chain and all that brings with it, and how I have to manage stakeholders internally. So what do I mean by that? It's a new industry, it's changing rapidly, and I think each of our businesses are expected to support new services quickly and securely. You take the old way of looking at it, or former way of looking at it, so the CIA, in terms of the availability and confidentiality of services that we all run, all slightly differently, but all working in the same industry. It's a question of you're using suppliers that are new or different by their definition, but businesses, especially from an institutional perspective, are expecting fiat type SLAs and performance, and that just isn't happening, right? Because it's new, it's different, and people are taking time to develop and get things up to standard. So getting that supply chain, whether it be from a security perspective or from an overall service perspective, up to the standard where stakeholders expect. So securing a supply chain that really isn't really there, or is very embryonic, to support services that are constantly available from the standards that people expect, is probably my biggest challenge from an availability and integrity perspective, for sure.
Sure, I think many of the others are also feeling the same. I'm definitely feeling the same on my side. Well, what about you, Matt?
Yeah, I think Andrew set it up very nicely for me there as well, because I think, a cybersecurity specific issue for my organisation, I think the one that I've faced is actually with a third-party supplier compromise. So, Ledger was a victim. One of its third parties was had rogue employees who basically downloaded, 200 companies worth of data, and that's since found its way out onto the web, which has caused no end of challenge. So exactly as Andrew said, the third party supplier managing their security been a big challenge for us.
Sure. And Phillip, what about on your side at Coinbase?
Sure. I mean, I think y'all stole some good options as well. Supply chain is a huge concern. But in the interest of adding something new to the conversation, I'll say for me at Coinbase has been the extremely high pace of growth that we've seen over the past 5 years, but let's call it the past year or so. And what that's meant from a cybersecurity perspective is meant that we're always doing more, moving in more directions faster, and the challenge is always to keep up and to make sure that across everything we're doing, we're delivering high quality, secure outcomes.
Sure, that's fantastic. And I think my 2 cents on those comments are from the supply chain. When you look at some of the most recent hacks, although the companies are more and more using third-party custody solutions, for example, while the technology itself is great, some of these third parties may or may not necessarily have the right processes in place, from anywhere from key initiation through to backups, etc. So there's your third-party risks that we're seeing from our side, from vendors that we need to do assessments on. And Philip, I mean, everything that you mentioned, absolutely. With all of the products that we're pumping out at Crypto.com, same thing. We need to make sure that we've implemented the security risk assessments and privacy risk assessments literally throughout the entire life cycle. And that's extremely challenging to do when we're trying to we're competing with everybody and trying to have more products and services every single week. So it's definitely a challenge. So thanks for that. So I want to kind of bridge the traditional cybersecurity world with the crypto world now, because many of us have come. I mean, there's no one in the crypto space that's going to say you've got 20 years or 10 years of experience in the cryptocurrency cybersecurity space, right? So we've all come from different backgrounds, which is quite unique. So as the crypto industry is relatively new, and you want to compare to the traditional industries, as a CISO and as a CISO of your old companies, what do you see as some of the same types of threats in the crypto space as the other industries you've actually worked in? And maybe also share what are some of the completely new security threats that you're actually facing, which are unique specifically to the crypto space. So quite a long one. Maybe Philip, we can start with you.
Sure, happy to do that. And it'll be interesting to see whether I'm in the majority or minority here, but I would say that the vast majority of security in the crypto space overlaps with security anywhere else. We're developing software. In some cases we're developing hardware. In some cases we're developing SaaS apps. And I could throw out a percentage that would be a random number, but let's call it 90% of the time we're operating in a domain that is common with the rest of the world. And I think the really interesting part is that extra 10%, where I would say, just to pick one area that's top of mind, I would say the security of smart contracts is a really interesting challenge that sounds similar to a traditional industry problem, but I think there's some spice to it, including the immutability and the accessibility that really differentiates it from anything I've seen before.
Sure, that's a good one. Maybe Matt, what are your thoughts on this particular question?
Yeah, absolutely. You see quite a lot of similarities there across the space. We do have exactly as Phil said, those same challenges of software, hardware development, the application development, how we do everything from code analysis to release management. Then you wrap all on top of that the new infrastructure. Ledger plays, I think, in a slightly different space with the products that it provides, the hardware wallets, as well as our enterprise services, so the Ledger Vault, and that then also gives rise to the same challenges for a larger enterprise, but also to Phil's point again about the speed and pace of change and development that we're having to push things out, new functionality, new features, new availability every week. So with regards to what is crypto specific, I think one of the things that we're seeing here is with the new new coins, new features, new contracts that are coming out. We actually see unproven technologies or technologies that haven't had sort of the 10 years of reliability or assessment being provided against them. So if you go back to traditional HSMs, they're a very well-known component, fundamental of traditional financial banking systems and services. So key management around that was all very, very well understood. You're now seeing new protocols coming through, so multi-party computation, MPC, which is still relatively immature, so it's been around for a little while, but you're just starting to see those the new adoption of it and being pushed out there. We haven't got that 10 years, 20 years, 30 years worth of security evaluation, security assessment, poking and prodding going against it.
Sure, great answer. I concur as well. And what about you, Andrew? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, don't want to be boring, but falling in line with 90% of what's been said there, in a sense that you find it with other aspects of the business and other external stakeholders that people throw away their fiat heads, and when they're talking about crypto, they think it's all new, it's all different, whereas actually 90% of the processes are the same, and it's just a different edge case within the same industry, and the same applies to technology and definitely the security around it. So making sure you have all your basics in place deals with 90% of, probably even higher, of the security challenges within this space. And that's not to say it's easy, because it absolutely isn't, but it's making sure your basics are good. That is very difficult, but we'll deal with the majority of these. The edge cases that crypto throws up, Phil, through the smart contracts in there, the protocol level attacks, how are you dealing with that from a custodian perspective? If it's the underlying protocol or the smart contract that is then breached and the assets removed, where does that liability lie, right? From a custodian, you weren't breached, it's the asset, it could be SV, for instance, the weaknesses in that, if that was removed from our platform with no essential breach of the platform, where does that liability lie? And that throws out, the liability question, the insurance questions, are all feeds into that narrative that I don't think necessarily has been explored yet, because some of them haven't been tested from a security perspective. And then conceptually, you have the finite nature of the assets that we're dealing with. You put from a retail banking perspective, you look at the fraud, a customer gets defrauded by a particular scam, and the banks will effectively, and depending on liability, put that money back in that account. The finite nature of crypto means that isn't the case, and the unregulated nature means it's not the case. So when stuff leaves the platform, when stuff leaves, from a malicious perspective, that isn't coming back. And when data leaves, for instance, it reduces in value over time. It's exploited. PII, credit card details, it reduces value over time. But from a crypto perspective, it's very finite. It's either under your control or it isn't, and it doesn't reduce in value in the time, apart from what we do as an industry, to blacklist assets, tag assets, and stuff like that. That's kind of a secondary effect. But there, for me, the kind of educated, the very finite conceptual nature of the assets that we're trying to protect. And the protocol level stuff, where you can attack actually the underlying technology behind an asset class, and it is actually the people who are there to protect it can't do anything about that. So there are some interesting edge cases that that we as an industry have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. I don't think we're anywhere near solving.
Yeah, I agree, and part of this also comes down to the lack of resource and talent when we try to look for people. And many of you had mentioned about the smart contracts. You've got new risks where smart contracts are now talking to other smart contracts, and then cascades onwards. So, typically we would be doing our static code analysis, dynamic code assessments, etc. But unfortunately, with the world that we're living in here in the crypto space, there's so much more depth that needs to be done, and more logic that needs to be reviewed. And as you all know, in our space, with the new coins that just suddenly pop up every single day, brand new tokens, then suddenly these exchanges or vendors or companies like us, we need to suddenly onboard them for to appease our customers. Then the risks as well that we need to be thinking about, how do we hold this in hot wallets or cold storage? But then unfortunately, some of the vendors at the cold storage haven't developed their systems in fast enough to support these tokens, right? So it's really a cat and mouse game, and all of these are really new to the crypto space. but going back to the traditional side of things, we are still seeing a lot of same but different. You know, the old phishing, spear phishing. You know, a lot of the times that we're seeing whenever there's big data breaches from data sets from the dark web, and people are just doing phishing campaigns, enumerating your apps to see who your end users are, and then doing campaigns like that to do account takeovers. So there's a lot of same but different. But I do think that there's going to be even more new type of security threats that we're going to be facing probably in the next 6 months, 12 months, with even more products and services that are coming out. So yeah, interesting space that we're in. So moving along to the next topic, we talk a lot about trust in the crypto space, but trust is hard to get when many regions are still unregulated with respect to cryptocurrency. So many crypto companies are thus using industry security standards to help to build trust with the end user. However, as all of you know, compliance doesn't actually mean it's secure. So what are your thoughts on this? Matt, maybe we start with you this time.
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's a few things to unpack in that there. I mean, you've touched on regulation, you've touched on security standards, you've touched on compliance versus security, and I think all of them come together in a bit of a nice mix. So let's start with regulation first of all. You know, I think we're just going to see increased focus and increased scrutiny in this space as we move forward. You know, we're becoming much faster adopting the mainstream. We're seeing some big announcements. Well, you're seeing announcements coming out, every week regarding some form of regulation or oversight or, something in one region or another around the world. And that means that as an organization, we all respectively have to be able to pivot and flex and be able to adapt in response to what those new requirements or what might actually be coming out. What I'm a lot more hopeful on is seeing a greater focus on sort of the public policy efforts where we're able to help shape some of what that regulation looks like as industry insiders and experts in our field. I think we should be doing a little bit more to get on the front foot with the education of regulators and regulated entities to make sure that they're phrasing or facing forward in the right way, leaning forward, so that it does help provide protection and benefits to the entire crypto ecosystem. There's nothing worse than regulation that actually just continues to detract and make it harder and put up barriers of entry, and that doesn't, I don't think, helps anyone. But you touched on trust and then the difference between sort of security and compliance. So in the industry, we always you talk about trust but verify. So that's you trust people, but you then verify to make sure that that's correct, and that's really true to particularly Ledger as an organization. It's true to and central to our ethos. So we use independent validation and verification of all of our products and our services. So we will go out and we'll have them independently security assessed in very detailed ways and labs against internationally recognized security schemes, and that way people can come and they can be aware that the products that they're buying or the service that they're receiving does have that level of assurance and trust that goes along with it. And that's not a simple thing. It's not an easy thing, and it's very much not a quick thing that an organization can go and do. It takes a lot of time, a lot of focus, and a lot of effort, and we'll keep working through that.
Okay, that's a very detailed and very thorough answer. Thanks for that. So maybe Andrew, what's your 2 cents on this?
Yeah, that was pretty comprehensive, Matt, and I'll leave the public policy bit to last. I think from an external certification point of view, where do I stand on this? I think we all agree that just because you've got a certificate doesn't necessarily make you secure. The value that we're finding in going through external certification programs, though, is that trust element, obviously with the genesis of the question, but during any due diligence phase, whether it be from investors, whether it be from clients, it allows us to go, yes, we meet a certain standard, not necessarily a high standard, but a certain standard, and it is externally verified. So ISO 27001, 27701, SOC 1, SOC 2. It just allows you to turn on and go, yeah, do you know what? Like, you don't have to take my word for it that we're great. here's some externals, and the narrative essentially changes, and you can, from a due diligence perspective, saves a lot of time in the medium to long term. An edge case for us, back end of last year, we moved into the government space, so supplying what we do into UK government, and they require it, they mandate it. So it was good that we were kind of ahead of that ball. And I'll put it out there from maybe a controversial perspective, but you'll generally find people who badmouth external certifications are ones that don't have it. You do the basics right, and you do your hardening and you do that 90% solution, and aligning to whatever standard you decide to align to and get that externally verified shouldn't be too hard. Yes, it's a lot of effort, but they're not high baselines, right? They're baseline, and you get externally verified, and it makes sure your basics are sorted. What I found, not just in this industry, but previous, the people who don't like the standards are the ones that either can't do it or won't do it for various reasons. So, it allows us to say, do you know what, we're externally verified, allows us to spy into UK government because they mandate 27001. And the third point is that, people who don't like those standards, they're not perfect. They don't encompass everything. They're not particularly flexible. Yeah. Some of them are out of date, but it does give that element of trust to investors, customers, and external stakeholders. And that's why we're pressing on with the external certifications.
Sure. And what about you, Philip? What's your thoughts on this?
Yeah, well, I think we've covered external certifications in great depth, and I'm not gonna I don't have anywhere to disagree with Matt or Andrew there. I would like to take us a little bit of a different direction and say, actually, I think one of the biggest problems facing the crypto industry is the inconsistency of global regulation. As a US based company, we're probably in one of the more regulated regions for cryptocurrency today, but we see, and from a consumer perspective, it's not necessarily always easy to tell the difference between, say, a US or New York based company that has a crypto forward regulator or a Japan based company with a crypto forward regulator, and one based in a company that doesn't. That actually goes to the customer trust side, goes to a question, or sort of a question I like to ask live audiences. It's not going to work as well in this context since we can't actually see an audience. But a question I ask folks a lot is, so let's imagine you're looking for a new bank, right? Just normal fiat boring bank. You walk into a bank and you're trying to figure out which one you want. How many people here have ever asked to see the vault in the bank? No one, right? No one walks into a bank and says, okay, great. Interest rates, products, fine. Let me see your vault. It's not a question anyone asks. Rewind 100 years, and that was a question people asked a lot, right? Especially in my context, in the history of the US, that would put us in sort of the, maybe call it 150 years, that put us in sort of the 1850s, where bank robberies were common, and this was a real risk. And I think that's where we are from a trust perspective in cryptocurrency right now as an industry, right? We're in the 1850s of the U.S. banking system, and stagecoaches are still getting robbed, and so there's a very natural question people are asking about: show me your vault, because the industry has maturing to do, and the regulators have maturing to do. Until we can get to a consistent place where customers can walk into the lobby of a crypto bank and not ask to see the vault.
Yeah, good reply. I'm on that particular point, I'm seeing a lot of that as well, whether it's the regulators or whether it's insurance companies or whoever you plan to partner with. They're asking more about, how do you secure your hot wallets? How do you secure cold wallets? Where are your backup keys? Do you have the right redundancies? What are your processes? So absolutely, these are becoming more and more of the standard type of questions that many of these third-party partners are asking. And to Andrew and Matt's point about the certifications, I do see in industry, I think I agree with Andrew as well, there are a lot of people that, well, not a lot of people, but there are some companies out there that would challenge the legitimacy of these type of certifications. So their argument could be it's very tick box security, that you're just getting it for the sake of having the certification, etc. Whereas some companies really do have company-wide scopes and actually are trying to do this the proper way. Okay, so we've come to the final part of the conversation. It's been really great so far. The way I'd like to wrap it up is to put it into two parts. We started with your respective comments on what you as a CISO in your specific company in the crypto space have actually experienced in the last 12 months. What I'd like to do in the last question, in two parts, is if you could share with the audience what you see as the biggest cybersecurity challenge specifically for your crypto organization in the next 12 months. And maybe finally, collectively as CISOs, what can we do to help with cybersecurity in the cryptocurrency space in the community to help with greater adoption of cryptocurrency as a whole? Maybe Andrew, we start with you.
I'll answer the second question first.
Sure.
Just because I think that's as an initiative, I'm pretty keen to get cracking with is information sharing. I know we speak about this offline. I speak to other CISOs about this. It's something I've set up in previous roles for industry sharing groups. I think we should formalize that, and I'm aware that there's lots of different bases, and it's generally hosted by, or at least legitimized by, law enforcement from particular geographic entities. But I think until that catches up, I think there is an opportunity for at least the more mature firms, from a security perspective, to formalize information sharing in terms of timings, locations, terms of reference, and things like that. Because the threat actor group is generally, as we all know, very geographically dispersed and isn't that geographically specific, in the sense that the added benefits, and what I found when I set up another group in the telco industry was it generally shifts people into three categories: those that can share and are willing to share, those that can share and aren't allowed to share or aren't willing to share, and those that can't share because they're not good enough. And it just allows people to to benchmark people within the industry, information sharing, not just threat intelligence information sharing, but who's good, who's bad, from a service perspective as well. You find that information and the knowledge of the ecosystem and suppliers into it matures things a lot quicker. So I think that initiative is absolutely key, because I know it's a lot more mature in other industries. Now, yes, there are side channels, be FSISAC and whatnot, but I'm struggling to find real crypto specific information sharing groups, and the appetite within the larger industries that the banks that do crypto generally don't focus on the security of their crypto parts, not specific threat intelligence, for instance. But I think the pure crypto players, we have a responsibility to set it up and make that more formal. Would be I think what we can do better as a community in the pure crypto space.
Sure. And in the next 12 months, what do you see as the biggest threat for you and your organization?
I think it harks back to Philip's first point in securing a business that is rapidly changing and expanding new services and capabilities. And it's quite easy to do that from a security perspective and make yourself non-relevant. You just turn into the security team that says, no, we can't do it. And we must meet these standards. The business then just bypasses you. You become irrelevant. And in the medium and long term, you become not as secure for that. It's about having a security function and capability that is able to keep pace with the business, not be the brakes on it, but be a supporting element to the business. And yes, you may put the brakes on at certain points. A race car can't go very fast around a circuit without its brakes. Very good on the straight, but not so good in the corners. But yeah, just not being the team that says no, and supporting the business in that rapid expansion. Because I think if we had this conversation in 24 months, we'd all have delivered things as businesses that we didn't think we were going to deliver at any particular point. And it's flexing that, and it's being able to do that securely without being a business inhibitor. The team that says no doesn't last very long. So I think that would be my major challenge probably over the next 12, 24 months.
I think we're all feeling the same pressure. So Matt, on your side, what do you think for you at Ledger for the next 12 months, and collectively as CISOs, what can we do?
Yeah, sure. So I mean, look, I think Andrew absolutely nailed it with that response there, and I don't want to do same, but it is going to be that pace of change. So I think the thing that I will go back to then is what else can we be doing in terms of the public policy space to try and help and educate, the regulators, the influencers within the business to get that wider adoption. So that would be the Andrew, plus here's some other areas where I think we will have the challenges in the next 12 months, and we need to be doing more. With regards to the, what can we be doing as a CISO? Once again, it's great to hear Andrew talking about the formalisation of information sharing. It's part of a program of work that we've already commenced at Ledger, and we'll be taking that forward. So really look forward to continuing to work with all of us here. We've all spoken prior to this call. We all do have that regular and that informal intelligence and information sharing to actually open that up to a much wider community. I think the other thing we need to do is we also need to be more vocal as CISOs in terms of the education and awareness for our end consumers, because at the end of the day, they're individuals who are being scammed. They're the ones that are having the difficult doing the onboarding because it's complicated, perhaps, depending on what service or where you're going or what it is you're trying to achieve. We need to be more vocal to help them with education and awareness so that they are better informed and don't fall afoul of the challenges that are out there in that environment today.
Okay, that's a very comprehensive one as well. Philip, your final points.
Yeah, I think that was too comprehensive, because between Andrew and Matt, you stole my top two things. I think I would double down on that consumer education in terms of what we can do to drive this industry forward. I think it's easy as practitioners who have been in crypto for a while to start to believe, oh hey, we're late, right? Everyone already knows this, when in fact that is the opposite of true. We are still extremely early, and there are a lot of people out there who do not know anything about cryptocurrency, and who who it's important that we reach out and we educate and we work with and we provide resources to enter this cryptocurrency world. In terms of the next 12 months, I think Coinbase has been pretty public that we want to provide more access to DeFi to our customers. This is exciting from a customer perspective, because if you've tried to get into DeFi today, it is not the easiest process it's not the easiest process for me, right? And if it's not the easiest process for me, how can I possibly ask other folks to spend the time to figure out how to get involved in DeFi? I think with that, on the security side, is going to come some really interesting and fascinating challenges around custody and how that interacts with DeFi protocols, around evaluating DeFi protocols individually and in total. Some of the protocol interactions are fascinating. You actually, I think, have less need for security researchers and more need for economists and game theorists at some point in the DeFi space. So that is going to be a really fascinating and exciting challenge for us over the next 12 months for sure.
Sweet. So, I mean, final comments on that. I think all of you have covered pretty much everything that needs to be covered. So, as per Philip's last messages, I think DeFi is still growing. But really, when you look at the crypto space right now, DeFi and all of these other NFTs, etc., are still a very, very small portion of the whole crypto market. There's so many that haven't even bought their first crypto. So how do these people get educated on cybersecurity and the best practices of just the most basic things, turning on your MFA and whitelisting of your addresses, cold storage, what it means, etc. So I think there's, as you had all mentioned, we're still at the very, very early stages. So consumer awareness and education is definitely something that that's going to need to happen. And again, on the collaboration front, Andrew, as you mentioned, all of us really need to kind of put together our heads and figure out how we're going to do threat intel sharing in a good way that is going to basically help all of us and ultimately benefit the rest of the industry as well. Fantastic. So we've come to the end of the standard discussion and the roundtable. It's been very fascinating to kind of pick your brains a little bit on what you're doing as a CISO in your specific space. There are a couple of very short questions that popped through, and I thought I'd just run these quickly by you from the audience. One of them was, how are regional data privacy regulations impacting your overall cybersecurity strategy? Does anyone want to take a quick stab at this one?
Sure, I can.
Yeah, go ahead, Phil.
That one. I think we have probably operations in the most countries around the world of this particular group. The way we look at this for data privacy in particular, we try to look across the globe and internally build out sort of a best of breed sort of amalgamation of the standards, right? So in a perfect world, I don't want to have to scramble every time a new data privacy regulation comes out. I want to have built my data privacy program on a set of core principles, that tend to underpin all of these regulations, right? The various set of rights and responsibilities and whatnot, so that as these new regulations come out, as long as they're in the same basic vein, it's, there's a mapping exercise that has to happen, and there may be some work around the edges that has to occur, but it's not sort of a wholesale rapid response effort to rebuild various pieces of technology. I think the hardest part for a company like Coinbase that is a global company, and this isn't just crypto, this is everybody. I think that's a global company, are data residency requirements. And I think those in particular can really throw a spike in the wheel of a company, and can be hard to manage.
Sure. Totally agree with those comments. Matt or Andrew, would you like to comment briefly on that?
Sure. I mean, I'll just touch on it very briefly. I think Ledger's in a slightly different situation as a different sort of organisation to Andrew, yourself, Jason, and to Philip. We've got a very simple philosophy, whereas we don't want the data. We're trying to get rid of as much of the data as quickly as we can, so we're not holding it. So actually, we're well in front of what data regulations are requiring, and that's the aim that we want to always manage and maintain. So if I don't have that data there, I don't need to worry about it. But that's not something that I have to hold as much as the other organisations do. We've got to hold it for certain particular legal requirements, be it taxation or warranty or that sort of thing. But I can do that all offline. I don't need that to be regularly accessible or to be able to touch it every single day. So hold as little as possible, hold it for a shorter period of time as possible.
Okay, cool. Andrew, anything else? Did you like to add to that finally?
Well, we're in the B2B space, so thankfully we don't hold a huge amount. The B2C space, and facing off the retail, so that's an old hat in terms of retail banking. And there isn't a simple answer to this question. If you work internationally, if you're compliant with one, for instance GDPR, by definition there's 3 or 4 national regulations that you're not compliant with in South America. So who are you going to pick? Which regulator is going to bang on your door and fine you the biggest fine is where you where you pick to be compliant with. But I think if you have your basics, what you have, you're a processor or wherever you sit in that chain, what you have, what you don't need to have, and you get rid of it, as Matt says, then you can be in a pretty good place. And as long as you have that case made out and you show that you're relatively competent in mapping your data flows, what data you have, what you don't need, and why you're retaining it, I've found that regulators in the data privacy space can be pretty amenable to that. So, but I prefer, I'm very much happy to be in the B2B space at the moment when it comes to data regulation.
Sure. So we all are in different spaces. Some of us are B2B, some of us are B2C, and obviously our data privacy strategies and the different types of challenges that we face are going to be a little bit different. So it's definitely, especially if you're in the B2C space, it's a challenge for sure. So thanks for that. Let's moving on to just another quick question, which is I thought was quite interesting. maybe a little bit of background on this. I think the more and more crypto companies that are popping up, I'm seeing a lot of startups that are crypto companies, whether they're service companies or whether they're apps or whatever they are. And for these companies, many of them are looking into hiring CISOs as well. So the question here is, for those who are planning to jump into a CISO role of a crypto company, what are your thoughts, given that we're all CISOs? What are the first two things that they should be doing in the first week on their job? Who wants to take a stab at that one first?
I have opinions that
I'm sure we all do.
I think the first two things that a crypto CISO should do, especially coming into a small company, is explore the processes and protocols around asset storage, number one. And number two, explore the processes and protocols around your software development lifecycle.
Yep.
I think we see so often in the news post breach of these smaller companies that, it was a process where the founder had personal access to the cold storage protocol and could do whatever he or she wanted to do, or something in that vein, right? Which is maybe it's what you got to do at a certain maturity level, but it needs to be rapidly moved away from. On the second one, I think we also see, and this is not just limited to crypto, I think this is true across the board. The story after the breach is so often, the CTO at 3:00 in the morning bypassed the promotion to prod process and just deployed a change, right? And replaced CTO with whoever else you want in the organizational structure. But that kind of immature process, you might be able to get away with in a lot of industries. Cryptocurrency is interesting because it really is a crucible of attacker activity, and you're not going to get away with immature processes for very long.
Very good. Matt, you want to chime in on that?
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with those points as well. My simple start of the two things in the first couple of weeks is know your data, know your assets. So where is it? What do you hold? Who's got access to that? What are you doing to make sure that it is protected? If you don't know your asset base to begin with, you don't even know what the size and the scale of the challenge is that you've got to secure. So make sure you get your arms around that very, very quickly.
Sure. And Andrew, on your side.
Yeah, go back to probably what we discussed in the first couple of questions is any advice to any CISO going into a new industry in crypto specifically. Don't forget what you've learned, because 95% of what you've learned absolutely applies to this industry. And if you do the basics right, do your hardening right, figure out what you've got, how to protect it, and keep yourself legal and compliant, you're going to get your 95% of the way there. So don't forget what you've learned in the past, because it pretty much all applies in this industry.
Cool. So it sounds pretty much the same. Make sure we understand what our assets are. When we know our assets, then we can measure our risks, understand our risk appetite, and kind of put the necessary controls to help to address those risks. So it's pretty much same. But of course, these new CISOs are probably going to need to skill up on blockchain security and new things and technologies that they may have not even touched on or heard of before. So I wish any future crypto CISO the best of luck. You'll get a lot of extra white hairs, I can guarantee you. Final question. When hiring security staff for your team, it's really hard to find cybersecurity people due to the worldwide shortage, which I'm sure you've all seen in the news, let alone experienced ones with cryptocurrency background. So how are you guys handling or overcoming this problem with hiring and hiring for crypto experts in your firms? Who wants to take a first stab at this one?
I'll take
Okay,
first stab.
Go ahead.
First point is I don't necessarily think there's a massive shortage in skill sets. I think there's it's framed as it's a wider cybersecurity debate, not just for us. I think it's just a reframing the narrative and the discourse surrounding that subject, in the sense that there may be a shortage of particular things that you want, but there is enough talent and experience out there. And if you're willing to invest in it in the short and medium to long term, then you'll achieve your long-term goals. So I think I've approached this in terms of a talent shortage. Any other way, we're based on Jersey. Our code's on Jersey at the moment, and we've had to spin up as part of our global expansion other entities, and it's a willingness to adopt our security operating model to a remote working model that allows me to tap into talent in particular geographic entities, framing the right job descriptions for the right people, paying the right amount of compensation, committing to training and developing then, and spinning out mentoring schemes for junior staff. So it's a lot of stuff that actually you find, or I found within the security industry that people neglect is the people part of it. Yeah, you need to get your basics right as with every part of security, but the people part sometimes is the last part that's neglected. So yeah, in terms of running a proper team, doing that properly, recruiting properly, recruiting well, and from a cost perspective, retention is much cheaper than acquisition from a people perspective in the medium to long term. And it's also getting that message across there to HR business partners as well, to say, look, if we want an above average security, then we need to pay above average wages. We need to commit to above average time on mentoring and training and making sure all those things are sorted. So yeah, that's kind of how I've approached hiring within our security team.
Sounds good. I agree on those points as well. Philip, you want to add a couple of points here?
Sure. I mean, I think our approach, just echoing a little bit what Andrew's saying, is that if you take a look at any of our job descriptions, I'm not looking for cryptocurrency background. That would be shooting myself in the foot. We are heavily focused on building that skill set to the extent that someone needs it, right? Like, I think there are a lot of contexts in security teams in cryptocurrency where it would certainly be a nice to have, but the person focused on enterprise security and implementing anti-phishing controls and all that fun stuff, cryptocurrency knowledge is not core to what they're doing. Just standard security knowledge is. So I think it's also about being very realistic in what you need skill set wise, and targeting your roles to those skills and providing training for things like cryptocurrency expertise or cryptography expertise in general to build those skill sets over time. Sounds
good. And Matt, finally, last comments.
Yeah, sure. No, agree with all of those from Andrew and Philip as well. But the one that I would add is also strengthening more on the internal development. So skilling up your internal resources to be able to make them more mature. Also helps you become a more attractive employer. So become that place and that team that everyone wants to come and work to. So be that draw to try and pull them in the first instance. So that helps being that sort of organization. Do the training and developments to build up those skills, the mentoring, we've touched on all of those, and find good third parties. Find the right niche or specialist organizations that can help you with those very specific things, and don't be afraid to have to go to that if you need and you can't get that or develop it within an appropriate time frame internally. So there are some very, very good externals out there, and we use them for very, very specific things, and so build up that catalog.
Fantastic. So to wrap that one up, it sounds like we need to focus on the people. We need to do more training, build that culture, have a really good culture of security, and people are going to come flocking to us to help to resolve the issue of us looking for people. And again, like what Matt had just mentioned, it's really important that we focused on a holistic, type of approach as well when we look into hiring and growing our teams. Okay, well, thank you very much, everyone. I think we've come to the end of the session, so I really appreciate your time. It's been a great session with all of you sharing your feedback on your specific companies and the cryptocurrency industry. So I really appreciate your time, and thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.